In the quiet town of Red Oak, Iowa, life moved slowly, just the way most folks liked it. Retired school teachers tended their gardens, neighbors greeted each other by name, and nothing ever seemed out of place. But beneath that peaceful surface, some stories had never seen the light of day. In 1993, a 27-year-old woman named Carol Jensen stood at the edge of a cornfield just outside town and saw something she was never supposed to witness. She never told a soul. Not her husband, not her pastor, not even her best friend. For 30 years, she buried the memory deep inside, convincing herself it didn't matter anymore. But some things don't stay buried. Not forever. Especially when a familiar face from the past shows up, asking questions. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. Carol Jensen had lived in the same white-sided house on Maple Street since 1989. After retiring from teaching second grade at the local elementary school, most of her days were filled with small comforts, coffee on the porch at 7:30 sharp, crossword puzzles in ink, and tending to her hydrangeas that bloomed like clockwork each June. Everyone in Red Oak knew Carol as kind, private, and steady, the sort of neighbor who always brought a pie to church potlucks and never missed a Tuesday morning book club. She lived alone now. Her husband, Walt, had passed in 2015, and the silence of the house had become both a comfort and a shield. But even in the calm of routine, there were days when something tugged at her, faint memories, a flicker in her chest when she heard certain names or saw old headlines in the town paper. Something she long convinced herself she had let go, but hadn't. It was a Tuesday morning like any other when Carol found the envelope in her mailbox. No return address, just her name typed neatly on the front. Inside was a photocopied newspaper clipping from June 1993, local teen disappears after graduation party, along with a note. You saw something. It's time to speak. Carol froze, her hands trembling slightly as she read the words again. That name, Amy Wilcox, sent a cold ripple through her. She hadn't thought about Amy in years. The case had gone cold and most people in Red Oak stopped talking about it by the late 90s. But Carol hadn't forgotten what she saw that night, standing by the cornfield's edge, heart-pounding. She had convinced herself it didn't mean anything, that she had imagined it. But someone clearly believed she hadn't. As she stood in the doorway, clutching the envelope, she felt the weight of 30 years suddenly shift. Something had stirred. 2 days later, Carol received a phone call from an unknown number. Normally, she wouldn't answer, but something told her to pick up. The voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm, male, maybe mid-40s. Did you get my message? He asked. Before she could respond, the line went dead. Carol sat in silence, staring at the receiver as a chill ran up her spine. That evening, she noticed a car parked across the street. Unfamiliar. Older model sedan, dark green, windows tinted. It was gone by morning. Nothing dramatic, nothing she could report. But it lingered in her thoughts. That night, she pulled out an old shoebox from the top of her closet. Inside were scraps of the past, photos, letters, and, tucked in the bottom, a journal from 1993. She hadn't opened it in decades. Her heart pounded as she turned the pages, looking for the entry from that night, the night Amy Wilcox vanished. On June 14th, the day marking exactly 30 years since Amy disappeared, Carol attended the town's annual Heritage Festival, something she hadn't done in years. She told herself it was just to get out of the house, but deep down, she hoped to see someone. And she did. Near the courthouse steps, she spotted him, Eli Turner. He had been a deputy back in '93, fresh out of training, now gray-haired and leaning on a cane. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Carol saw a recognition flicker in his. She approached him, cautious but firm, and asked quietly, "Do you remember that night?" He nodded slowly. "I never forgot," he said. But no one ever talked. That brief exchange unlocked something in her. That night, she wrote down everything she remembered, what she saw, what she heard, what she had buried. Then, for the first time, she drove out to the edge of the cornfield. The place hadn't changed, but now she was looking at it with different eyes. The next morning, Carol found an unmarked manila folder slipped through her front door. Inside were 3 documents, a copy of Amy Wilcox's autopsy, previously sealed, an old witness statement with Carol's name blacked out, and a photo she'd never seen before. It showed a pickup truck parked at the edge of the cornfield that night. Walt's truck. Her late husband's. Carol's breath caught in her throat. The truck had been sold years ago, but in 1993 it was unmistakably theirs. A sick, hollow feeling settled in her stomach. Walt had told her he was at a card game with friends that night. She never questioned it. Now, doubt festered like rot. What had he been doing there? Had he seen what she saw, or worse? The realization shook her. The silence she had kept for 3 decades wasn't just hers anymore. She felt fear, yes, but something else too. A rising sense of responsibility. Maybe even guilt. Carol's heart pounded as she sat in the local diner, staring at Eli Turner, who had agreed to meet her in secret. The weight of everything she had uncovered was unbearable. Eli's voice was low, tense. "I've been waiting for you to come to me, Carol. It's not just about Amy anymore. There's more at play here. Someone's trying to cover up the truth, someone with power in this town." He handed her a slip of paper with a name written in bold, Lance Harding. The mayor. Her stomach dropped. "You need to be careful," Eli warned. "Harding has eyes everywhere, and if you go public, you could be putting yourself in serious danger." The room felt small, oppressive. Carol knew she had a choice: stay silent, protect herself, and pretend nothing ever happened, or take the risk, expose the truth, and find out how deep the web went. What would she do? What would you do? Carol sat alone in her car late that night, staring at the darkened windows of Lance Harding's office. Her mind raced, every possible consequence played out in her head, each one darker than the last. She had made up her mind to go public, to expose everything she knew. But as she approached the building, a shadow stepped out from behind a parked truck, blocking her path. A cold voice spoke from the darkness. "You've been asking the wrong questions, Carol." It was a man she recognized from town, someone who worked closely with Harding. Her heart pounded. He had no intention of letting her leave unscathed. She was out of her depth, trapped in a game she never signed up for. She considered running, but in that instant, she realized she couldn't go back. Not now. The truth had already begun to claw its way out. Just as she reached for the door handle, a car engine roared in the distance. Someone else was coming. Someone who might help. As the headlights of the approaching car grew brighter, Carol felt a surge of hope. The figure in the shadows hesitated, then disappeared into the darkness, retreating into the night. The car pulled up beside her, and the window rolled down. It was Eli Turner. He hadn't given up on her. "Get in, Carol. We don't have much time," he said urgently. Carol's breath caught, but the knot in her chest loosened. She climbed into the car without hesitation. They drove straight to the county sheriff's office, where Eli knew someone on the inside who could help. The truth would finally come to light. Carol spoke up, recounting everything: the truck, the photo, the lies, and felt a weight lift from her shoulders with every word. She had spent 30 years in silence, but now, at last, the truth would be uncovered. She wasn't alone anymore. Sometimes facing the past is the only way to finally move forward. What would you do if you were in Carol's shoes? Months passed, and life in Red Oak began to change. The investigation into Amy Wilcox's disappearance was reopened, and many secrets the town had buried for years slowly came to light. Carol, now regarded with a mix of admiration and wariness, found a new sense of peace. She still lived in her house on Maple Street, but the silence wasn't as oppressive as before. She began to attend church again, speak more openly with neighbors, and even joined the town council. Yet, despite everything that had happened, there were still days when Carol wondered if she'd made the right choice. If she had stayed quiet, would she have saved herself from the trouble that followed? Or did the truth, no matter how painful, really set her free? What would you do if faced with the same dilemma? Would you speak up or stay silent to protect your own peace?